If when looking at a list of search results you've ever had a hard time deciding which of the sources you found would be most useful for your paper, you can try evaluating it using the CRAP test. CRAP is an acronym developed by librarians to help students remember important criteria for evaluating sources, and it stands for currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose. It's one way to help think about some of the factors that would make a source you find more or less persuasive if you're using it in a speech or paper. With currency, you should make sure that the information is recent enough to still be relevant to the points you are trying to make. How recent a source needs to be depends both on the subject and the sort of information you need. For example, if you need public opinion statistics for a current events assignment, a report published 10 years ago will probably be too old since it no longer reflects current public opinion. However, if your assignment is to compare the thinking of two classic philosophers, a background source summarizing those philosophers' viewpoints may still be very useful even if it's decades old. Generally speaking, sources in the sciences go out of date very quickly, often in as little as 3 to 5 years, where sources in the humanities, like history or philosophy, are often useful for many decades. Most databases have some sort of date slider to help limit results based on how old they are. Use it to get rid of results that are too old to be useful. With relevance, you need to decide not just whether a source covers the subject you are researching, but also whether the kind of information it contains fits the research question you're pursuing. For example, if you need a scholarly discussion of your topic, an article from a popular news site is not going to be helpful even if it covers the exact subject you're writing about. News articles tend to be simplified for lay audiences and don't have the depth of analysis or source documentation you'd find in a scholarly journal article. Since many databases contain both scholarly and non-scholarly sources, if you want scholarly articles, you should look for a limiter that allows you to focus on those, weeding out things like reviews, news stories, or any other source type that wouldn't contain the kind of information that you need. With authority, you need to make sure that the authors or organizations behind the sources you have found are qualified to write on your topic. This is especially true when you are Googling and don't recognize a source you find. You should look to find out who wrote the article, what sort of credentials or training that person has had that would make him or her worth listening to, and what sort of organization is behind distributing the information. Journal articles and books often contain information about the authors, usually either at the very beginning or at the very end. If that information is not provided in a source, try searching for the author or journal or website. Even a Wikipedia article can be helpful to learn a little bit about their authority on a subject. When you are considering accuracy, you should think about things like whether the information in a source is consistent with other good sources you've found, whether evidence and citations are given, and whether the source has gone through any sort of editing process. Most scholarly sources go through an editing process called peer review, where experts in a field review a source's information before it's published. Not all assignments require scholarly or peer-reviewed sources, but you should make sure that the level of accuracy in a source is appropriate for the subject you're writing about. For example, news summaries or opinion pieces might be fine for certain less formal reflection or response type papers, but you wouldn't want to rely on them if your assignment requires you to understand and comment on a research study's methodology or results or limitations. You'd want to go find the original peer-reviewed article for an assignment like that. Finally, when considering the purpose of a source, you should be thinking about why the source was produced, as well as how objective it appears to be. Was it created to inform, to entertain, to persuade, to sell? Some articles, like reviews or op-eds, are primarily meant to offer opinions, and any bias may be very easy to identify based on the opinion being offered or the individual giving it. Others, like government reports and scholarly research articles, are primarily written to inform, and any potential biases would be much harder to spot. You'll have to make sure that the purpose and objectivity of a source is appropriate to the kind of assignment that you're doing. You should look at things like abstracts in articles or introductions of books, which usually state the purpose of the article or book very clearly. While a tool like the CRAP test will not by itself help you place a source in the wider context of information or assure you of its complete reliability, it is a good way to remember some of the basic criteria you should be thinking through as you decide which sources are going to be most compelling in your speech or paper.